Hey everyone, Coach Tyler here. Welcome to episode 3 of going through a contest prep just as a coach for myself and then my colleague Ben Berluti. So, in today's episode, we go through just a couple of questions that we got from clients just regarding the bodybuilding process, dieting, how to manage how we feel about the scale weight and some of those things. And we also dive into some of the recent changes that we've made to his prep as he comes into the home stretch. And we talk about why we did that, what we're looking for, and then a couple of other things as we do get a little bit closer to his peak week. So enjoy and make sure to hit that subscribe button.
All right, what's going on, everyone? Time for Contest Prep Talk, episode 3, with Tyler Weeb and myself, Ben Berluti. How are we doing, Tyler?
Doing pretty good, doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I just noticed the Arnold tank top. I like that. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
every time I go, I try and get like a shirt for it. So,
How many times have you been to the Arnold Classic?
um, three or four times now, probably.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's cool.
yeah.
How, how would you say it compares to the Olympia?
I like it more.
You like it more?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's more fun. Yeah, but the crazy, like, I mean, the craziest one I went to was like March 2020, when
Okay.
obviously like, COVID was like really starting to ramp up, and I
Right.
was in Chicago boarding my plane to fly into Columbus when they just announced that they were canceling the Arnold that year. And I was like,
Oh
well,
no.
I guess I'm still going. And it was actually, it was still pretty cool. Like there were still some people there like hanging out. But yeah, that was a
Oh
little
wow. Yeah, talk
yeah.
about that timing. Dang man. So you literally get
Yeah.
on the flight. Wow, that is nuts.
Yeah. I was literally boarding and like, they announced it. So oh well.
Wow. 2020 was a crazy time, right?
Yes, it
But
was.
yeah, so we thought, we got quite a bit of questions today. So we'll start off like with like a recap like we've been doing each month now that we're in month 3 of prep here.
Yeah.
And just to catch everyone up, you recently made some adjustments, decided to throw a book at me.
Yeah.
Uh, so we'll talk about why we did that. So I guess I'll just give everyone the numbers just so they can see everything here. So, I was cruising from the end of July up until beginning of September. I'm taking in 2,170 calories a day, so 250 carb, 185 protein, 50 fat. And we've had cardio at 2 pretty hard sessions on the elliptical, 25 minutes each time, and then 3 moderate, sessions on the incline treadmill walking. And that's been it. 5 days of weight training. Um, and we didn't necessarily hit like a total stall out, but it was like progress got slow. So you wanted to make a change. You want to tell us, what those changes were and what your rationale was?
Yeah. So I mean, we obviously cut calories a bit and cut your macros. So we kept protein the same. We brought carbs down to 200 and then fats down to 45. So it was like roughly like a 250, 300 calorie change
Yeah.
per day. And yeah, like it's one of those things where we were trying to squeeze as much as we could out of as much food as possible. And I think I even had mentioned it in your check-in video where it was one of those things where if we had more time, I probably would have continued to just stay here for now because
Sure.
I think a lot of times during a dieting phase, people just get impatient and they'll just cut, 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 where sometimes you just kind of need to let the body do the work and just be patient. But because we're now about that 7-8 week mark, I wanted to give us a good push now so that we're hoping, and the plan is that 1 to 2 weeks out, I mean for sure a week out, but hopefully 2 weeks out, we're at a point where you are shredded enough that we can now go back into this metabolic building phase and actually kind of start filling you out a couple of weeks ahead of time, just because as you start to increase carbohydrates, it does take about 48 hours for it to be fully converted into muscle glycogen.
Yeah.
So
Not
it gives
immediate.
us that
Yep.
opportunity to fill you out we can take it a little bit slower, right? We can maybe be a little bit more cautious with our upticks in food. We can gather a little bit more data on a day-to-day basis of how you're looking, at what times, at how many carbs, post-workout, pre-work, all of these things. So the more time we can have to kind of build into the show, not only do we have an opportunity to make you look better and hopefully even rebuild a little bit of lean tissue, but also get a much better sense of how your body is responding to the protocol, because you also have another show after your first one. So the
Right.
more we can gather now, the better we can even tweak that second time around. And so with kind of how close you are, kind of in that 6 to 8 pound range of where we were last time, this is kind of that perfect opportunity for us to kind of dig deep, get that last little bit of body fat off over these next 5 or so weeks, and then set us up for a really nice peak week building phase, if you will, into that first show.
Sure. Yeah, I love that breakdown. It's like make the push and then give yourself time to load up going into the show. And if you give yourself even a little bit more time going into the show, that's ideal, right? And so and it's funny because I started to cut at 148, averaging 142. As of this past Monday, it's Thursday right now, right? And then last time I was 136 before we started that carb load, so we got this like 5-6 pounds, right? So it's like let's just make the hard push now, do for 6 weeks or whatever it takes, and then we could reload from there, if you will, right? And the other thing that's funny was like last time when we did our carb load, it was just a progressive linear load, right? 6 days, 5 days really, of bringing those carbs up. It was like I gained another 3 pounds because I ended up stepping on stage at 139. And it's funny, like when you remove the carbs, add carbs, how much that water weight fluctuation happens, right? Like even we were just talking right before we hit record, like after the adjustments, I was like in the 142s, 143s, an occasional 144 on the scale. I've already had the day in the 140s. This morning after an off day, I was in the 141s. So like things are moving, but a lot of, water weight things, but you see the trends down, right? So I think it was a good move, right? And like you said, we're at 200 carb. And then fat's down to 45, and then we're doing the refeed as well. Real quick, do you want to break down why you want to do the refeed, Tyler?
The biggest thing is just ensuring that your recovery is still there. And I mean, at this point too, as you are as lean as you are, we've talked about this in the past, the relative percentage is just going to be much different. If you drop half a pound in a week, like that can make a big difference on your physique compared to someone else.
Sure.
And having that refeed day with these lower amounts, it's going to help psychologically. You're just going to get that little boost of energy. You've got a nice little high day coming up. One day in a week isn't necessarily going to have a lot of physiological benefits at the moment. And right now it's more of just that psychological aspect. And we're in such, I mean, you were already probably still in a deficit before this cut. And now we've just pushed that deficit even a little bit more. And so to have at least that one day, a little of extra recovery, psychological break from just the grind, I find can then maybe help someone set up these next 6, 7 weeks where we're really pushing just to kind of give that little extra boost. And it also can provide us a little bit of data feedback of how your body responds to those carbohydrates. And, are you dropping weight after that day? Okay, that is a good piece of data for, maybe a peak week. Maybe we can add in a double refeed where the body's actually responding very nicely to some extra
That's a really good
carbohydrates.
point.
So
Yeah.
maybe we can actually get a little bit more because I mean, you're probably experiencing it, and anybody that's gone through prep, low food, low fat, your energy just drops. And what naturally happens, pretty much unconsciously, is you just start moving less. And so
Yeah.
for us to kind of offset that a little bit by having an extra day there where your energy maybe peaks for 48 hours after just even one refeed day, maybe we can keep that output up a little bit. So it's kind of starting to also gather some of that data for a potential peak week of if we have this refeed, we're seeing how the body responds over those, next 48 hours. It's like, okay, like maybe we can get an idea of where that max carbohydrate intake might be during that during that peak week, knowing what we know now.
Yeah. No, those are all really good points. Yeah, it's just going to give us more data to work with. And you're talking about how, like, oh, if we had more time, maybe we could write out the calories and whatnot. It kind of answers one of the questions I actually had. It's like, when you go through a fat loss phase, like, give yourself time. Don't be impatient. Don't rush it. Even someone like myself who's starting off like already lean, right? Like 16 weeks, and we're talking about, oh, if we have more time, it's like, hey, you got to give yourself time, like minimum 4 months if you're already in decent shape, air quotes, because that's going to, depend on person to person, but you know what I mean. So yeah. And the other thing I want to mention real quickly here is people might be wondering, like, you keep saying, Ben, you're in the 140s and like you're having 185 grams of protein. Like, you got to remember, I used to be a 185-pound power lifter, and like I've been tracking macros for a long time. So like I used to have 185 grams of protein. I just kept it the same as I came down in weight. My body's used to it for digestion's all is good and stuff. But like if we ever needed to like go down in protein, we could. And
Yeah. And I mean, kind of maybe a side tangent here for, once you kind of get back into your reverse postseason, I would almost play with bringing it down to a more moderate amount in your off season, so that when you do come into your next prep, we can actually potentially add in some more protein to help with feelings of fullness, to help maybe retain a little bit more lean body mass, things like that. So having that almost in your back pocket as someone comes into a prep or a longer diet can be great. So that's where, for the most part, I like to have people around 1.6, 1.8 grams per kilo, because you can go up to 2.2,
definitely.
2.4. And so to kind of have that to play your ace in your pocket or whatever, to help someone out if they're feeling some extra hunger, can have a lot of benefit too.
Yeah, definitely. And I was thinking about that as well. Yeah, so that's something definitely that's good to bring up. So yeah, I think we could jump into the Q&A. What I was thinking, Tyler, is like maybe I'll read off the question and then like we could take turns like answering it first. I'll give you the first one, right? And I'll give like my take, then we could kind of flip flop or something like that if you want to do that.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So the first question, we got some psychology questions too, and I thought that would be really cool to dive
Yeah.
into. Someone's asking me, how, and I'll just kind of paraphrase here, but basically, how do you get over weight insecurity, like as a natural competitor? Like, it's like, I want to cut down, get lean, but like I'm 180 pounds and I'm short already, I'm going to get really small in terms of scale weight. How do you deal with that? What are your thoughts, Tyler?
Um, I can't remember who said this, but this is kind of how I like to put it in perspective for people when, maybe they're a little over obsessed with the scale weight. It's just a piece of machinery in the same room you take a shit. Like,
Yeah.
that's all that it is, right? And I understand how people get there. I totally get the idea of being obsessed with that, but we also have to realize, if we're looking at it from even like a bodybuilder side of things, if you're stepping on stage, they're not asking what weight you are. All they care about is how you look. And I have seen a shift with a lot of clients over the last couple of years of not worrying about the weight anymore, which is pretty awesome to see, and that they just want to look good. And I think that's kind of just really what we have to focus on is you can be whatever weight, and it kind of just comes down to body composition, because that's what we want inherently. That's why 99.9% of people start this journey, is they just want to look better. And whatever weight that is, that's what it is. And
Right.
for myself, I have been anywhere from, so I'm 5'11". I have been anywhere from 170 pounds, and I've been 225 pounds on purpose when I was
Yeah.
powerlifting. And I've been 190 multiple times. I've been 200 multiple times. I've been 210 pounds multiple times. And right now I'm 205, and this is probably the best I've ever looked at 205 pounds. And so I think really focusing on just the body composition and not necessarily the scale. Like, it is a great way to measure our progress, obviously, but let's say, if you are a shorter person and we get down to, 165-ish, yeah, that might be small, but guess what? We could come back to 175 through an amazing building phase of 2 years, and you would look night and day different. And
Right.
so, in that sense, scale weight doesn't matter, right? Like it's just kind of your relation to gravity and just how much you weigh. And so, as much as it seems simple, it is simple in a sense, but you still kind of have to work yourself through that psychological factor of not caring about it. And that can take time. And it can also depend on someone's past history with body image issues, with if they've had eating disorders in the past or bullying in the past and things like that. And, that is where I would always encourage someone to, go talk to a therapist, go start
Yeah.
to through what some of that trauma might be, because it isn't just as simple of going, well, I don't care about my weight anymore, I'm healed. Like there might be things that you do have to work through, which I find, is very important. Like we do have to look backwards to move forwards a lot of the times of where is this belief coming from? Where is this binary thought process of the scale weight determines my worth coming from? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't, but that doesn't discount that belief either, because it's there for a reason and you believe it for a reason. And so it does take some personal work on your end. And it's, I've been going to therapy for the last 7 years, and it's not fun. Like it's not fun work, but it is a necessary work, and it does pay huge dividends in the end of being able to kind of move past that and be acceptable with yourself, and then focusing on the body composition aspect of it. And I think health too, like I find that is something that I like to integrate a lot into my coaching, is talking about the quality of life, right? And I mean the
Sure.
quality of life too that you can add by just living a healthy lifestyle. And guess what? If you do that, you're going to end up looking better anyways, right? And so
Right.
if we can focus more on some of those aspects, all of that other stuff is going to come as well.
Yeah, no, you really hit the nail on the head there. I don't even have a whole lot to add there. Like when you work with a mental health professional, whatever, like they could do wonders, where they're coming from, what they can provide, the tools they can provide. If you are working with a fitness professional as well, like the both of you coming together to work through things, like really can help. And yeah, and for me, like, how do I deal with it? I just don't care. Like, I know I haven't peaked my genetic potential. So like whatever the skill is what it is when I get shredded, right? And I even people had asked me like when I went to my initial cutting phase, oh, what's your goal weight? I'm like, I don't know, just whatever it takes for me to get in shape. So but I can
Yeah.
understand the frustration for sure because they're like, holy cow, like the scale says a thing, but like you said earlier, it's just a scale, right? Like, yeah, so now there's
It
a
doesn't,
lot to that.
yeah, it doesn't determine your worth. It doesn't determine who you are as a person, and what you're able to contribute to your loved ones and those around you. It's you know
Exactly.
there's there's a lot more to, I think, worry and be worried about and to put your attention on, but again, not to discount that insecurity either.
Of course. Yep. Yeah, well said. Um, the next
All
question kind of ties into it. How do you deal with stigma as a bodybuilder on stage as maybe smaller than others? And just for me, it's just like, hey, as long as I did everything I could during that prep season, because I'm not going to be building muscle when I'm going through a cut. I'm want to focus on retaining muscle. Like when I go to the gym, I pretend that I'm going there to build muscle, right? Still train hard and everything. But we're retaining muscle. What I can control is my level of conditioning, leanness, and my presentation of my posing. As long as I stay on track with the plan with nutrition and cardio, and I practice my posing, there's not much else I could do. And I'm confident it doesn't really bother me when I'm on stage. Now, leading up to that point, yeah, like it's very real, the mind games you play with yourself. But I know, like in my last show, I just had a good time. Like I wasn't stressed at all. But leading up to it, like yeah, I definitely had anxiety, like like a lot. But when I got to that day, it was just like, this is what it is. Had fun, and I was like, oh, this is great. So that's kind of my approach.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, maybe I'm not thinking of one, but I can't think of a single other sport that is as subjective as bodybuilding, right? Like that you don't know what judges are gonna, well, you do know what judges are gonna be there, but like, I mean, look at the world of bikini right now and how much the criteria has changed in just like 2 or 3 years. Like
Yeah, really.
so subjective. You don't know who's showing up, right? Like you don't know who's gonna be there. You could be the best you've ever looked and place last, right?
Yeah.
And so it is such a individual sport of it's really you versus you. And it's like, unless you truly have aspirations of being the best natural bodybuilder, bikini, whatever in the world, and like this is going to be all consuming of your life, I don't think there should be a stigma in a sense because you're just doing it for fun, right? And then that's what it should be about of bettering yourself, you're having fun, you're challenging yourself. That because that's what it is. Like it is a 24/7 job when you are in prep and it is a lot of you versus you. Are you going to get up and do your cardio? Are you going to get up and go do your training? Are you going to get to sleep at a good time? Are you going to weigh out that food? Are you not going to snack that day? Um, and so, you have to kind of look at it in that sense of you got to control what you can control because ultimately that is all you really can do at the end of the day. Like maybe you show up and for whatever reason the judges were looking for a different look than what you maybe thought. Well, that's the sport, right? Like
Yeah.
you are going to lose more than you win. It's kind of like baseball. Like if you can go 3 for 10 in your career, you're in the Hall of Fame. And that's kind of the same idea with this
Yeah.
of, if you win 3 shows in a year, you're doing pretty damn good.
Oh
Like
yeah.
that's amazing. So definitely there's that stigma as a bodybuilder for sure because all you do is see is the big massive guys on excuse me on IG. But at the end of the day, it's very subjective, and it's going to come down to just challenging yourself and like you said, having fun. I think for us that have done shows, you think it's going to be super negative in the back room, right? Everyone's just like, but it's a very friendly community for the most part in the sense
Yeah.
of everyone's grinded, everyone's gone through kind of the same process in a sense. And so there's kind of that what's the community back there of you kind of all suffer together in a sense.
Yep.
And so to have fun, to meet those people, it can be a great day because everyone has started at a different point in their journey to that stage, and they've all gone through different things to get there. But you've all done something very cool in the sense of how far you've pushed yourselves and how far you've challenged yourselves.
Definitely. Yeah, no, that's well put. And there's that already that camaraderie like right away when you see
Yeah.
the other athletes, because you all went through the same thing. And it was funny because I was just at a posing clinic last weekend, and like I saw some people there I hadn't that were at my last show, and they were getting ready for the show I'm doing. I haven't seen them since then. It was really cool, because again, we're all in it together, all supporting each other. You do the best you can, and you enjoy the journey, right? So moving
Exactly.
on to a couple X's and O's questions. Someone was asking, they're like, "Hey, I never really understood the flat look. Like, what is that, and what causes it? Is it lack of carbs, too much cardio? What's going on there?" So, Tyler, what say you on that?
Yeah. So I mean, if we're talking about a flat look as someone is coming into competition day and week and things like that, certainly flat is going to be when someone is quite low carb, right? When they're nearing the end of their diet, just because there's not a lot of muscle glycogen anymore, right? Like
Yeah, like me right now, right?
right? You don't get that nice full hard look because you are depleted. So certainly more carbs is going to help that throughout the peak week, right? Where we're progressive linear loading, we're increasing those. Also, though, sodium and water are going to have a big impact on that as well. And so that's where show day carbs just aren't going to play a big factor in you really sharpening your look for when you're about to step on stage. That's where more of the water sodium is going to play a big role. And so that we are, again, kind of filling out those muscles. We've already got loaded the carbohydrates. And so now we're tweaking those minor adjustments so that we can bring water, we can get a nice pump with the sodium, and then really bring out this full hard look. So you are going to lose a certain amount of muscle over the course of a prep. Like that is just going to happen no matter what you do. And so again, this is where having that extra time to get you as flat as possible, shredded as possible, so that we can take the time to refill you back out, making sure that we're rebuilding some lean tissue, fill up the muscle glycogen, have our water and our sodium, which are very, very important. You should not be cutting those out at any point. So if you have a coach that is cutting those out,
right,
question, because you are not going to look great on show day then.
no.
We need that to bring out that full hard look, and you're not looking flat.
Yeah, no, that's really well said. On our next episode, we should talk a lot about that peak week and the water and the sodium. You hear it so often. I just find it the craziest thing ever that even with like some of the best bodybuilders in the world, like they talk about how they're pulling water and salt. It's like, I mean, I don't know. It's like, gosh, it's like this guy could look incredible, and then they do something crazy at the end, you know. And then a lot of times they'd be like, oh, I was off, you know. It's like, oh man, you know, it's like you gotta build into it. But yeah, you know, we don't have a lot in the tank, right? A lot of calories, a lot of carbs. You're gonna look flat, right? But then when you train in the gym, the vascularity is good, the pumps are like, oh, okay, yeah, there's my muscle. Then it goes away after, right?
Yeah,
But yeah,
unfortunately.
flat look, you know. So yeah, I like, you know, the muscle's a balloon, right? You know, we don't have a lot of carbs, a lot of water, a lot of sodium, just floating around in your system, if you will. It's the balloon's gonna be smaller, and when it's filled up, it's gonna push against the skin and look bigger, right? Put simply like that.
And
Yeah.
I mean, in the question, you know, or did the muscles never really grow? Yeah, like we're not going to build muscle in a prep. So certainly, like that's kind of part of it, right? Just because you're not having enough food. So certainly part of it, but the majority of it is that it's the lack of carbs and then the water and sodium.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Well put. Someone was asking about the best rep ranges during a fat loss phase. Any difference for compound or isolation lifts? And then to go along with that, I also had a question on intensity during a fat loss phase, whether it's contest prep or not. You know, I mean, it's both applicable to both scenarios. Do you lift lighter? Do you lift heavier? Do you, you know? So as far as, you know, rep ranges, look, you know, it's going to be the same as it would be during a building phase or a maintenance phase or whatever, right? Just living life, working out in the gym. Like, I mean, the research kind of shows us that it's like, hey, I mean, really anything but like 5 to 30 reps per set is going to do the trick, right? 30 rep sets of squats is going to be very tough to recover from, not to mention that you could injure yourself, right? Like if form breaks down. So, hey, you know, pick a range, 5 to 10, generally speaking, maybe a little bit north of that if needed, and that'll get the job done, right? So with weight that is heavy during that rep range.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I would say, you know, the biggest changes that might occur during a prep phase is volume comes down a little bit just so that we can maintain intensity, and that, you know, we're still able to maintain recovery. So those are the two biggest things that I'll always pay attention to with someone during a prep, is that if intensity does start to drop off, sure, a little strength might be lost, but we should be able to maintain most of that strength. And so keep that in mind as you do go along, because recovery is going to be very vital. And so if you're not recovering well enough, probably time to look at dropping a little bit of that overall volume throughout the week.
That's a really good point. Because if you're doing set after set after set, it's like, okay, you know, you're getting to a place of diminishing returns. Do a couple hard sets, right? Get that stimulus. Make sure you're forcing that muscle to hang around, right? But no need to beat yourself into a pulp, you know?
Yeah, because we know at a minimum 9 to 10 sets per body part can easily build muscle. So if we're just looking to maintain muscle, we could probably do a lot on that lower end of the 9 to 10 sets per week, which you can easily do in 3 or 4 workouts and still recover very, very well and still have very intense workouts.
Exactly. Yep. I had another question that was This was a really cool one. So it's basically this someone who was a competitor in the past, but they're currently a personal trainer. They're on their feet a lot, and they teach a lot of like group exercise, boot camp stuff. So like they're always going on the go. It's female. She gave her exact stats: 5'8", 123. You know, she's like, okay, so I'm training to build muscle. And like what I would say is like, hey, you know, you're definitely in a unique situation where it's like, you know, you're doing a lot. Your energy expenditure is very high, so your caloric needs probably are a lot higher than someone else at a similar height and weight and age and that sort of thing. So if you're going through a building phase, like your maintenance might be a lot higher than someone else. So determine that, right? And then as training, like just find that balance with recovery, right? We're just talking about the volume thing. Like if you're on the go all the time, you know, chances are energy is not going to be the best, you know, if you're doing tons of volume, right? So maybe you're doing your training like, and it could depend on the scenario, but maybe you're doing that earlier in the day. That way you can put a lot of focus on that. Again, some larger meals. That way you're kind of recovering, refueling for your work throughout the day. That's kind of where my mind goes up because her energy needs may be higher than someone else who's sitting in a chair like a coach, like one of us, right?
Yes.
But those are
Yeah,
my thoughts.
and I mean, even look at cycling your volume through your mesocycles, right? Your training blocks where it's like, hey, you know what? For whatever, a 12-week block, I want to focus a little bit more on my glutes and hamstrings and my shoulders, right? So maybe you're doing 15 sets there, but then you lower it for your other body parts so that you are still then preserving your energy, but then you are focusing a little bit more volume on where you want to do a little bit more growth. And so that would also be just setting up your training plan, something to take a look at and just partitioning your volume a little bit differently.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. She didn't mention what division she was in, but again, you know, the priority, the muscles of priority, focus on those, right? Again, you only have so much recoverable volume, you know, in the tank, if you will, right? Someone else was asking like if they're making progress while they're dropping weight, and they want to make even more progress, so they drop calories further. It kind of goes into what we talked about earlier, right? I'll let you take this one, but kind of what we talked about already.
Don't.
Yeah, don't. Yeah.
Just don't. Yeah.
Don't fix
Yeah.
what ain't broke, right?
Just don't, right? Like if you've plateaued for like a true 3 weeks, that's where I'll go, okay, now we probably need to make some adjustments. But again, a lot of times, sometimes you just need to be patient and let the body kind of just do its thing.
Yeah. No, it's simply put, don't fix what ain't broke, right? And like you said, 3 weeks. Like if you see a stall out for 3 days, you got to give it time, right? Like don't be impatient, you know, because you want the best results. You want to hang on to that muscle, and
Definitely.
yeah, just be consistent.
Yeah.
Consistency wins every time.
And kind of
Um,
coming
Go ahead.
back to that first question is like, just because the scale weight doesn't come down for a week doesn't mean you stop losing body fat either.
Exactly. That's 100% correct. Yep. That's why you want to get the other markers of measurement, right? Pictures, measurements themselves, and patience, right?
Yes.
Um, the other question here probably be our last one. Actually, I want to shout out Dan Devine asked this question, winner of the Transformation Challenge. He wanted to ask both of us what motivated us to compete in our first shows and how were our expectations different than like the reality, you know, of that first show, and what are some things we would have changed, maybe like one thing we would have changed.
Yeah.
So I would say motivation when I did my first show, I was actually already cutting for a photo shoot. So I was like, I want to take this a little bit further and step on stage. Let me get a little leaner and just go for it, you know? And the desire, that's probably what motivated me to do it. Cause I've always been a fan of bodybuilding, right? So like I competed in powerlifting before. I want to compete on the physique side as well, right? So I mean that was that simply put, and not a whole lot of depth to that. And how was it different? I would say that, you know, putting it all together, it's not just dieting. You also got to practice the presentation a lot and be proficient at that. And another thing was like I was stressing myself so much about that I probably prepped a little too much for my presentation in that first show. And then when I got to the stage, I didn't even realize that at the time I was on stage. It seems like some of the other guys really didn't, right? Like I didn't see it until I saw videos later. And it's like, you know, they didn't. I don't know. I'm not saying this in a negative way at all, but it seems like others may have not prepped as much. And then when we're lining up for individual routines, like I practice a lot. I put a lot of thought into that. Some other guys are like, oh, what are we doing now? Oh, we're just gonna have some fun. I'm like, yeah, do you practice? Like, no. So I guess I would say that would be a big
Yeah.
difference in reality. And just it's very supportive, right? So there's no like there's nothing negative about it backstage, I would say. And one thing I would have changed, I would say my digestion towards the end, you probably start to hold on to everything you could. I wasn't having as much produce, as much veggies as I probably should have at the end, just because I didn't want a lot of volume, like in my stomach and being bloated and whatnot. It's probably something I would have changed because it was like a couple ounces of cauliflower a day, I think is what I was doing at the end. And so this time, just taking more of a moderate approach there. It's probably the only thing I would change.
Definitely. I know we got a couple minutes left here, so I'll be quick with mine. I mean, mine was kind of similar. Like, just kind of always had to try it out and step on stage. And this was certainly when online training was just taking off. Like, Paul had only been a coach, I think, in the industry for like a year or two when I first contacted him, right? And so it was still very new. It was something I just wanted to give a try. It was kind of blowing up and being, super popular. Obviously, the aesthetics of it were always pleasing. Just, want to look good, right? And so that was certainly my motivation. The experience, my first time through, like I don't think I really knew what I was actually getting myself into and doing. And so I certainly spent like the first half of it just not really being 100%, just I just didn't know. And so I would say like that was the change I would have made. And that was the change that I made in my second time around in 2018, where I said I had a perfect prep. I didn't miss a cardio session. I didn't miss a training session. I didn't overeat once. Like I had the perfect prep.
Awesome.
And so that was kind of the biggest thing that I had changed, from that first one to the second one, just knowing the whole process of it and having a lot more education behind it then.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, pretty simply put, just wanted to look good and wanted that shredded look. And then, yeah, just not understanding like what that actual process was, going through it initially and then changing that, that second time through.
Yeah. No, it's kind of similar, right? You learn from your experience. Like you said earlier, 5'11", 170 pounds on your frame, like that's a lot of muscle on a natural guy's frame, so that's pretty awesome,
Yeah.
Goals, goals,
Yes.
Tyler.
I had those glute striations.
Yeah, there you go. Well, hey, been good talk. I know we ran a little bit long, but I want to jump off here before Zoom cuts us off. So good stuff, Tyler. We'll get this uploaded and we'll do it again next month.
It was good to see everyone.
All right. Take care.